lack of equity, that's not justice. The justice occurs when we're not necessary. No one has, from the outside, has to come and drop any resources in. So that's a hard piece to kind of unpack, and it really is a community-to-community type of condition, situation. We've been talking a lot about indigenous communities lately, and the fact that communities, there's this kind of, psychological erasure that we do when we talk about indigenous communities, right? It's like they were here, or they were, a genocide occurred and indigenous people no longer exist. But the reality is that there are indigenous people all around us. Often we call them Latinx, but because of the way of naming that white supremacy does, we don't even afford the fact that there are communities that are now being called Latin that are indigenous to this landmass and in Southern America, but that are traveling back and forth across borders that Western empires created, but they're not Latin. But they assumed that identity because of the way that these things work. So, I'm on a tangent, but I guess the main point is just to think about what will it require for the work that we do to no longer be needed is when we start. That's when we're gesticulating in the justice space.
So eating the elephant one piece at a time, how did Lewis Ginter begin? What did community or identifying community play a role in that at the beginning for Lewis Ginter?
So Lewis Ginter has first of all, Shane Tippett, our executive director, is phenomenal. And I gotta give him the utmost of props because as, we live in nonprofit organizations that are traditionally hierarchical organizations. So if the executive director says we're going in a certain direction, that's the direction we're going on. Of course with the board and all that type of stuff, we also have a federal organization, so I'm not sure how it works here. But typically the board, executive director, and it flows out to staff. So the garden started on this journey well before I got there. They had been having conversations about the amount of people of color that were coming through the doors, started doing free days. The free days were really, really amazing. Then we stepped into a decision to do Museums for All, which is a program that allows for people to access the garden through a discount if they receive EBT and SNAP benefits. The garden had always had its toes in community stuff, but when this beautiful RVA stuff started coming online, it was like this organic thing that just started taking shape. And the garden just respected the fact that it was coming online and decided to be the backbone organization for it. And when they recognized they didn't have the cultural competency to be out in the community, they were intentional about hiring somebody from the community, right? And putting in their position description that they wanted cultural competency, cultural relevancy to take shape and be manifest in this person's work. So when they hired me, I would never forget, I went through a 4-part interview process. And I remember being in an interview with Shane and thinking to myself, I hope you guys Googled me. Because, I have a story as well, and I've been rooted in community well before Lewis Ginter became a thing. And, as we were talking about, my background, I was like, I'm here to learn from you guys. And the response was we're here to learn from you too, right? So that type of humility and vulnerability was really important for our organization. And I think that the responses to the work that we've had has been just an example of being vulnerable as not only individuals, but as an organization, right? And vulnerability sometimes is, people look at that word whew, no, I'm not really ready to be vulnerable, right? As an organization, right? Where's my weak spots are exposed, that kind of is the connotation. But in all reality, when doing community work, the more vulnerable you are, the better, right? Because it's like, how can I trust you if you got all these guards up? If you're coming into my community to work with my community, but you're not being authentic and fully transparent about why you're here and how you can help, then how do you expect a community that has had campaign after campaign and development after development to come in and take this very extractive relationship with people coming in? How do you expect them to even connect? So I think Louis Ginter saw that quick and really said, okay, we're gonna, instead of getting defensive when somebody posts on a Facebook post and doesn't like what we're doing, we're gonna invite them into a meeting and we're gonna talk to them, right? And so that's really what has happened. Like anytime there were people that really like were pushed to the edges and didn't really like how the garden was showing up, that was a prime opportunity that was taken to have a phone call and be like, hey, let's have lunch, let's talk about it and figure out, where you're coming from, and you can hear our intent and sincerity in how we're showing up in the work. So it's been a long arc. People on the outside looking in, there's a lot of work to be done. Please don't get it misconstrued. Like, I'm not gonna come here and make you think that Louis Ginter has all of it right? But I do know that it's like a cruise ship, right? So if you're on an island looking at a cruise ship coming in, right? You can't tell how much of a turn that cruise ship is taking because of the distance that you are from, the state, from the cruise ship itself. But the dude the person that's turning the wheel, the captain of the ship, him turning the thing, he could have this thing going on a 90 degree turn, but because you're like 4 miles away, all you see is a cruise ship, coming in the thing. And that's the nature of these large organizations, is that you can't see the turn immediately, but what does Martin Luther King say? The arc of justice is long, but it bends towards justice. Thank you. Right. So that's kind of what I would say. The garden has started a process, and it's made some very significant steps in the right direction. We spent $150,000 specifically in urban green spaces in 2019. Over 190 trees and shrubs planted in community. 40 Get Your Urban Gardeners trained, and over 17 green spaces, activated, with the average of like $20,000 to $30,000 of investment in each one, right? That number used to be zero, right? There was none of that happening at Louis Ginter in 2015. In 2016, I first got there, I was scared to spend money. I was like, I don't know, they're gonna let me. In 2017, I started spending a little bit, and then 2018, I started spending a little bit more. And in 2019, I'm like, this is just what we need. I'm sorry, this is how it's gonna go down. Development person, let's get it, figure out how to make this work. And so that's kind of like, even my own, I guess, confidence. I had to kind of check myself, because when I first came in, I didn't want to spend a dime. I was like, can I buy some pencils? It's okay. And now I'm like, well, we need this rainwater harvesting system. It's going to cost $15,000. And I need to make a deposit of $8,500 to the contractor. So, okay, all right, let's go. This is what it is. This is what it's going to take to get the work done.
So, thinking of, you're talking about looking at what other institutions are doing historically and afterwards, with that in mind, and also you trying to make this part of your firm's DNA beyond just you. How successful has that been? Like, is this becoming of value among your staff? Are people still resistant to it? Is this still kind of like a very specific thing that you do? Or
So, that's a great question. So, at first there was no community engagement department. So I came in and my program was underneath education. Second year, we parse it out, community engagement gets a department. My director of education resigned, right? Said, hey, it's time for somebody else to take that steering wheel. She said she came back and decided to work under community engagement, right? So the former director of education now works underneath me. I'm the manager of community engagement. She's the coordinator of community engagement. So I got a staff of 1.5 because she's part-time, right? As an organization, community engagement has its own place in the strategic plan, and I have a bunch of objectives that live underneath that. I was able to get racial equity written into the strategic plan, and us evaluating efforts towards racial equity in the strategic plan. That was last year, so now we're in year 2 of that. The way that I've maneuvered is our work has really been recognized by people like Kresge. Like, we did some work with Kresge. We did some work with the Kellogg Foundation. We also did some work with Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. So the way that I made this inoculated into the garden is that I came in saying we're going to do racial equity, and then I built collaborations around that, right? So Beautiful RBA was one thing, but I came in and said, okay, we're going to work with the city, Parks and Recreation intimately, right? We were also going to work with some of the organizations that had community gardens existing, right? And through those collaborations, right, it became a relationship building exercise, not only for the garden to other individuals, but for our executive director and other staff to those individuals as well. So I like to think that it's rooted. I know that we got a ways to go. I'm still trying to get another person in there, and that's a whole nother conversation about the monies and staff, which I hate to have, but I gotta have. I'm like, yo, I need another person. What are we gonna do? And they're like, well, we gotta get the money. I'm like, but the work ain't stopping, right? It's there was more work, but I don't have enough people. So there's always this tug of war. So I'm working on, again, more collaborations so that we can develop, more capacity for the demand that's coming online. I feel where we're at now, after spending over $300,000 in community, I think that if anybody comes in after our current director, if he decided to go in a different way, it would be one of those, what? How you putting all that down? It would be that kind of public response. And then our board is really loving the energy that we're bringing to the space. So that's really a linchpin for it. It's the fact that our board members are yes, we want this and more. Please continue in this direction, which is, that's a huge piece of the puzzle.